Welcome to this Exponential Race to the Top session from Exponential Roadmap Initiative. When the UN body for climate science, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, little slip there, the IPCC, when that IPCC releases its only special report of this assessment circle, then that will be a special report about cities. And that's because cities play such a big role when it comes to decarbonizing buildings, when it comes to energy and transport and also waste. It's often cities and regions that lead the way. And countries can really only deliver on their national climate targets when the cities and regions deliver. So now the Exponential Roadmap Initiative, we unite companies, right? We unite companies that are innovators, transformers, and disruptors. We don't unite cities so much, but that's what ICLEI does, Local Governments for Sustainability. So for this session, we teamed up with ICLEI, and Yunus Arikan will be joining us in just a moment, coming now. Please, I do welcome here, the first gentleman to join us here on the scene is Ziaul Haque of the Ministry of Environment, Forestry and Climate Change of Bangladesh. Welcome. And then we have Yunus Arikan of ICLEI. We have on Zoom Carolina Urrutia, former Environment Secretary, Bogotá, Colombia. And we have the mayor of Chefchaouen in Morocco, Mohamed Sefiani. Thank you for joining us. I would like to put my first question here to Mohamed, who is the newly elected Vice President of ICLEI. So congratulations for that. Your city is an intermediary city. I call it an in-between city. So it's not small, it's not rural, but it's also not a mega city. And it has lots of growth ahead of it. With that lots of growth comes the opportunity to leapfrog, to avoid the mistakes that some of the already big cities might have made on that journey. What are the opportunities that you see to leapfrog, and how are you seizing these opportunities?
Thank you very much, Andrea. Dear friends, dear colleagues, first of all, is the opportunity to thank all members of ICLEI, all the teams and all partners of ICLEI, because I was elected as one of Vice President of ICLEI. It's a great honor for me and for my city, Chefchaouen, to advocate all the climate action at the local and regional level in Africa and around the world. So thank you very much again. As you say, my city, Chefchaouen, is blue cities, painted in blue and committed to green. In the north of Morocco is an intermediary city, and this is an advantage for us. Because now is a big, very big and large city, and now is a rural and very, very small city. So it's an intermediate city as a function, as a role, as a scale. And that's one of the benefits of that is the proximity. We have a human scale. And the proximity, when we talk about proximity with people, with civil society, with the local actors, and that's helped us to have one participatory approach would support our initiative and our programs and our vision. So that the planification, we do it with the local, with the approach, participatory approach. We had the Vision 2030, we launched it in 2018, and we are working on it. And all the action plan that we had, we said with participatory approach that is easier in intermediate city as Chefchaouen. And local economic development is very, very, very important for us because we work with the local, with the rural area, because we know that intermediate cities, we have a strong relationship between the city and the rural area. So we are working in this economy, solidarity and social economy, and this is very important for us. And the planification of urban planification is important for us because we have to do what we are thinking about climate mitigation, adaptation, and the scale of the city will help us to avoid, as you say, the mistakes down in largest cities in the world and in Morocco, in our region, Tangier, for example, and Tétouan are the largest city that we have. Such we have some lessons about this largest city, and in our urban planification is planification of the city for the future is down on basic on that, and the climate and sustainability is for us very, very important, and we share that with the civil society, with the local players at the city. So I think is very, very important that, and intermediate cities grows more rapidly than others in Africa, and with the global networks as ICLEI, we share best practice, we share new ideas in Africa and around the world, and all that help us to grow correctly and to respect our values of climate and sustainability.
And can you just give one little example of how you're doing that? What one mistake that you've seen from others is the one that you're avoiding?
Yes, I think that mobility, for example, in a bigger city, in some cities that I know, I think we should do it differently, and that we are working on that. We are planning our city, and the planification of the construction of neighborhoods, the new and the result of rural immigration. We saw in larger cities some mistakes, and on that we are working on that, and to avoid this type of mistakes.
Thank you. I would like to turn to Carolina now. There in Bogotá, you were one of the practitioners that was invited to an IPCC meeting when this special report on cities that I was talking about earlier, when that was being scoped. What stories of urban transformation did you share in that meeting from Bogotá?
Well, good morning, and thank you very much for the invitation. I think, contrary to Mohamed, we made all the mistakes. Bogotá is an over 8 million people city. We grew in a quite disorganized manner. And of course, city planning is relatively new in action, despite the fact that it's been part of the legal framework for years. So I think slowly correcting these mistakes that were made in the past, that we didn't know were mistakes because we didn't know we were going to be facing a climate crisis of this size, have to be corrected while the city still exists. And I think that's a huge challenge. Bogotá has two examples that weren't really, particularly the first one, which is our transport model, wasn't really thought about in terms of climate change. We really began making corrections to our transport system for two main reasons. Quality of life, as I mentioned, Bogotá is a huge city. Most of the people in Bogotá spend upwards of an hour and a half in public transport every day. And initially, our public transport system wasn't centrally planned and had a lot of issues with air quality. So beginning in the early 90s, a huge reform agenda started to happen with our transport system, beginning with changing our fuels. The fuel quality in Bogotá was really quite bad. And so arrangements were made between the national government and our gasoline producers to bring better quality gasoline and diesel to the city. And that had a huge change in our air quality, but it of course also had good results in our climate change and GHG emissions in general. And the key to the transformation of our transport system has been that it has been continuous over the past 25 years, starting with fuels, then going into buses. Bogota had the first really big rapid bus system in Latin America, and I think in the world. It's still one of the biggest examples of rapid bus systems in the world that really began to grow in the beginning of this century. And even though growth hasn't been continuous, improvements to the system have. We're slowly going into electric buses. We're in a constant competition with Santiago de Chile to be the cities outside of China with the most electric buses. There are now almost 1,300 electric buses circulating in Bogota, but that's also because we don't have a metro or a subway system. So growing that, building our first metro line and making sure we have clean transport from a rail perspective has also been a priority for Bogota. These added reforms have amounted to about an 80% reduction of our particulate matter from the public transport system. And this is a life-changing improvement for many people in Bogota, particularly women and children, who tend to be the ones who get sicker from air quality issues and who have to stay home to take care of their children. And that usually results in affecting their opportunities to join the workforce. So that has been a huge difference. It's still going on. We have a long ways to go, but Bogota has managed to reduce about 18% of its emissions from 2017 to 2023, based mostly on these huge changes on transport. And that brings me to the second one that Mohamed also mentioned, and it's planning. Bogota put forth a new land use master plan, a planning system for the city. It's going to be valid for the next 12 years. And despite the fact that we didn't get to build a city of proximity, we're trying to build smaller cities inside our big city, building on the idea, not of a 15-minute system. We're way too big to be a 15-minute city, but we can be a 30-minute city. And what we did was plan for a city that has access to economic opportunities, to transport, health, education, everything that's really vital for our citizenry in 30 minutes. It's going to take a while for the city to evolve in that manner. It's probably going to take the full 12 years that the land use plan is going to be in use. But it's really important that we start thinking of the city, not especially cities as large as Bogota, not just as a whole, but of smaller communities inside the cities that can build on proximity, quality of life, better transport, and of course, green areas. And that would be, I think, besides transport and proximity, one of the most important changes our land use plan made. And it's the fact that not, rejecting a lot of land use pressure, especially for construction, we decided to amplify our green and protected areas instead of making them smaller. Our land use plan increased green and protected areas by 30%. This, of course, has a huge political cost. Those who are building the city, housing, still have a lot of pressure on the system to make sure that we have more space to build. And instead of building a sprawling city, a larger city that rejects the idea of proximity, we decided precisely not to use our rural land, not to use our protected areas, but to go into a model of urban renovation, where we start going into places of the city that are quite abandoned, that aren't really fulfilling their full potential in terms of urban planning, and making these alive parts of the city through transport, through investment from the city and with the private sector. There's a lot of complaints that this makes urban development a little more expensive, and it does. It's a little more costly and it takes more time. You have to talk to the people. You have to think about renovation in terms of participation and what people actually want, because they're already living there. But we're sure that it makes for a better quality of life, for less pollution, and for a better scenario, both in terms of mitigation and adaptation to climate change.
Thank you, Carolina and Mohamed, both for sharing those stories from on the ground, as it were. Now, Yunus, you lead global advocacy at ICLEI. And we've named this session Seizing Opportunities to Win the New Economy, Cities, Regions and Countries. What examples can you give us from other cities and regions in your network that are wanting to seize the opportunities to win this new economy?
Thanks, Andrea. First of all, it's really a great pleasure to collaborate with you once again, because we were together in Dubai, in Sharm el-Sheikh, and it's also good that you are catching the discussions here in Bonn. So we're very happy to see our leaders addressing in this session. I would like to pick up those from the global north because Mayor Sefiani and Carolina are representing the voice of different contexts in the global south. So let's see what's going on in the global north. Maybe I can start with the city I live, the city of Bonn. This is one of the champions of climate neutral cities to be climate neutral 2035. This is 10 years before the federal target of Germany. And it was revised in the past couple of years because city administration has created a network with citizens, a new grouping so that the contribution of the communities, neighborhoods are then taken up in collaboration with the administration so that it's not a top-down from the city hall, but it's a collective effort. Maybe you are noticing mobility plans, as both of the leaders here discussed, is also an issue in Europe. And the city is trying to use more non-motorized transport or installing solar power much rapidly than before. The good news, maybe you're aware, there was an election last night. This city, which is under the green policies, the public voting was above the national average for the green policies. So which shows that if the politics are close to the citizens, they can much better connect and reflect it to the political context. Another example, last week here we had the former mayor of Vancouver, Greg Robertson. It's one of the greenest city. And Vancouver is also, for example, although it was in the north, far north, they are using the district heating. Sorry, they are using the wastewater system, the waste heat from the district wastewater system for district heating of the buildings in Vancouver, in a cold city like Vancouver. They are using that kind of a capacity, and 10 years ago they introduced the zero emission standards for buildings, and last week the UNFCCC negotiators are talking about buildings. That shows again how citizens can contribute the topics in implementation, then the negotiators can benefit from this experience. And maybe last example again, this time from Tokyo. Tokyo is one of the most urbanized and full of high-rise buildings. For the past 12 years, Tokyo is implementing an urban cap-and-trade system with the residential and commercial buildings being part of a cap-and-trade system, which is being implemented in the United Nations as well. And they don't wait for a conclusion from the UN negotiations, but they continue to implement. And one of the serious emission reduction policies comes from this kind of communities, commercial activities, and citizens on board. This shows that global north and global south, as long as you have a passionate leader, you have good skilled staff, and if you have skilled citizen engagement, the progressive policies can be implemented everywhere, and we can make changes in the lives of our neighbors.
So thank you, Yunus, for sharing more stories there from the so-called subnational level. And now I'd like to turn to Ziaul Haque of the national level, of representing Bangladesh, which is a country sandwiched between the Himalayas and the Bay of Bengal. It's one of the most climate vulnerable countries in the world, whether it's floods or cyclones or sea level rise. You're facing it all and having to deal with it all. But you also have tremendous potential for renewable energies. So I'd like to know how the building out of renewable energies could help you, or could give you an opportunity to increase your resilience.
Thank you, Andrea, for having me in this very important dialogue. You are right that in terms of the vulnerability, we are facing catastrophic impacts, adverse impacts of climate change. And in an assessment, it says that we are losing almost 6.8% of our GDP each year. And if we go this business as usual approach, then it will increase the loss of GDP in the years to come. And you are right that we have potentials. We have a lot of potential in terms of tapping the renewable energy resources. And you know that we submitted our NDC update in 2021, where we tried to include the renewable energy contribution to a greater extent. At the same time, now we are actually in the process of developing our 2025 NDC. And at the same time, we are also focusing on having the city-level climate action plan. Our big cities, the capital cities, Dhaka City Corporation, they have developed the comprehensive ambitious climate action plan for 2030, 2040, and 2050. So we are hoping that this time, while developing our national NDC by 2025, we'll obviously assess and reflect the aspiration of city governments to our national mitigation targets, and hopefully there will be a great deal of improvement in terms of utilizing the renewable energy in our NDC submission.
And we'll get to that and a little bit deeper in just a minute. But as of now, Bangladesh is still a least developed country. So though you're trying to or aiming to outgrow this status by 2041, so you face huge costs of capital, and that's a barrier, right? What opportunities are there for the national government to come together with cities and regions to attract investments for clean technologies and for renewables?
Yeah, good question. In fact, officially we will get graduated from LDC in 2026, and we also developed a perspective plan. We call it the Mujib Climate Prosperity Plan for 2041, where we will reach our 100 years of independence in 2041. So in that case, not 100, it will be 75 years of our independence. So we actually developed a trajectory where we will try to achieve from vulnerability to resilience to prosperity. So in that case, we put forward a visionary targets in terms of the renewable energy. So by 2030, we will improve our contribution, the relative contribution of our renewable sources from now 6% to 30%. And by 2041, where we are actually aspiring for having a good prosperous country, by 40%, our relative contribution of renewable sources in our national electricity generation would be around 40%. So last month we have NAP Expo. The Bangladesh convened Global NAP Expo, and in the NAP Expo, the government has launched, our Honorable Prime Minister has launched the Climate Development Partnership, and we invited all development partners to come in and to join forces with us to mobilize the resources. We are also trying to mobilize domestic resources, but at the same time, we are also trying to harness the resources that will be utilized in a coherent and synergistic fashion. There should be no duplications, the overlapping. So we want to put our all development partners on in a unique the climate development partnership. So let's see, and at the same time, in the Mujib Climate Prosperity Plan, we have also developed a climate and disaster risk instrument, financial instrument, where we will try to put some innovative financing mechanism into our to integrate in our national policies, national mainstream system.
And maybe Mohamed there can give an example, because Mohamed, I read somewhere that you are quite a pioneer in putting together finance, for instance, for a public green lighting project. What was your recipe for success there?
Yes, thank you very much. We know that not as easy to have access to finance and climate finance at the local level. Less than 10% of climate finance goes to the local, but we can be innovative. We can work with the multi-level action is very important for us. I will give some example from Chefchaouen. Energy, for example, energy. We had with the support of national government and the region of PACA in France, we launched the first energy info center. It's the first one in Morocco. To advise and to support all studies and school and companies to use renewable energy and efficiency. Energy is efficiency. Example two, for example, with public lighting. Public lighting, we had agreement with the UN Capital Development Fund, UNCDF, and the national government, Moroccan national government, to support us to have 100% sustainable and smart public lighting network that we have. And donc, we are working on that. We are implementing the project, and in a few weeks, we will finish 100% of city. That will be the first city in Morocco, 100% LED and sustainable and smart public lighting in the city. Solar energy, we have now 50% of the municipal buildings equipped with solar energy. And the wastewater with the gap found, we have support of study to have the valorization of the waste, and with national government on basic of this study that we had supported by gap found, they are helping us to have a new valorization station and central for waste that we have. So that's some example. And the last one in food, because my city Chefchaouen is recognized as an intangible heritage city for Mediterranean diet, gastronomy, Mediterranean gastronomy in UNESCO, and with the ICLEI, with that Afri-Food Links is one project very important in food system, and we are working in this project. Some example that we have. So I think it's very important to be supported by networks as ICLEI, and to have the multi-level climate action and multi-level sustainability action with the region, with the national government, and with the international organizations.
So we're almost approaching the end of this session. Carolina, I would like to hear just one brief example from you of a barrier that you overcame in your work in Bogotá. Could have been a financial one, where you came up with innovative solutions like Mohamed did.
Well, I think there's a very interesting barrier that many city officials are facing that we don't talk about enough, and that I think should be a part of the conversation. And it's sometimes citizens are expecting climate action to look a very certain way, and they're kind of disappointed when it isn't as fast as they like. And my example is going to be the tensions that are constantly there at the city level in terms of, for example, transportation. As Bogotá builds its first metro system, as it gets rid of old buses and replaces them with electric buses, there's a lot of modifications going on in the cities. And sometimes, for example, we have to sacrifice trees on our streets, right? We have to knock down trees to make space for trains or for new buses, for whatever is necessary. And despite the fact that we have very advanced compensation systems, every time we have to sacrifice a tree in the public space in Bogotá, we have to plant 5 new ones. And that's already a challenge because we don't have a lot of space in the urban part of the city to plant new trees. But people feel continually disappointed. People have very strong affectionate relationships to public trees. And sometimes politically, it's very hard to convince them about the advantages of having cleaner public transport and the idea that these public green spaces are going to be not only compensated, but improved upon using the resources that come from building these public spaces. So I think often there's a lot of tension between what people expect to see at climate action and what's actually happening. And perhaps the second one that I could mention very briefly is precisely that of financing. And I think it speaks to a lot of the tension that we feel from the city level with the national governments. And it's about how national governments necessarily have to help finance the biggest projects. We have a huge challenge in Bogotá in terms of water. We're building a big purification and a plant that will treat 70% of the wastewater of the city. And unfortunately, we haven't been able over the past 15 years to reach an agreement with the national government on how to finance that plant. We have to have national government authorization in order to assume the debt that we need from the World Bank to build that water treatment plant. And again, I think the political scenario, the political economy of it all isn't always easy. Mayors and presidential figures are often at odds in the electoral scene. So we have to make sure that international organizations make it easier for national governments and city governments to get over their political differences and make sure that we're financing the right programs and projects at the right speed.
Thank you so much, Carolina, for those. Now, we do need to wrap it up. I want to turn to Yunus for just one sentence answer here. What one recommendation would you have to national governments to both design NDCs that reflect subnational action and empower subnationals to accelerate action?
I think dialogue is the most important thing. And the good news in Dubai, there was a commitment called CHAMP initiative with the Emirates, and 72 countries endorsed this. We really recommend all these endorsing countries, and you have seen the case of Morocco, Colombia, Bangladesh, and many others. Now they are in the phase of designing this into their national policies. If we come to Baku, in this end of the year, if they already start these dialogues and then bring the results to the global processes, and that we present this in Belém, this will really shape our next 5 to 10 years much more collaboratively. And of course, we are discussing here many of the mitigation-related issues or solutions that are helping our lives easier in terms of our resources. But let's remember, the biggest problem is on the adaptation side. You have seen Rio Grande do Sul, you have seen Katrina. The addresses, the solutions to these challenges are beyond municipal budgets, and the national and federal governments should all collectively work together. So solution is dialogue, openness, and transparency, and sharing this prosperity of we're living in a new era of multi-level climate action, and that's what gives us the power.
Thank you so much, Yunus Arikan of ICLEI, Local Governments for Sustainability, Ziaul Haque of the Ministry for Environment, Forest and Climate Change in Bangladesh. Thank you, Carolina Urrutia, Bogotá, formerly Environment Secretary there, and Mohamed Sefiani, Mayor of Chefchaouen, the city that I still didn't pronounce correctly, but forgive me for screwing that one up. Next, we'll discuss national climate action plans in even more detail. So stay tuned for that. Thank you for joining this exponential race to the top session on seizing the opportunities and winning the new economy, cities, regions, and countries.